Welcome to WorkSpan TV. I'm Ryan Johnson of WorldatWork. Talking today with Joe Clarkson of Towers Watson. We're going to talk about how to bring total rewards into the sales organization. Joe, thanks for coming in.
Very welcome, thank you.
So Joe, let's start with the recession. What was the effect of the recession on the sales professional and the sales organization in the last couple of years?
Well, I think we've heard a lot of articles and podcasts and publications about the effects of the recession in that it really dampened down variable earnings, it put more emphasis on base salary. It also made companies take a deeper look at how they can make sure that their sales talent, not only their top performing, but the population, the sales force, continue to stay engaged and motivated. What we've seen coming out of the recession is that sales compensation is just as important as it was before. Absolutely critical to attracting good sales talent to coming into the organization. What we've learned from our research, though, is that it's not sufficient to engage and motivate and to retain that sales talent. Absolutely important that they have a good and effective and competitive sales compensation plan. But our research has shown that in order to engage and to retain salespeople, sales compensation actually moves down to about the fifth factor. The first and second are about career development and having development programs and opportunities for salespeople so that they can see what other opportunities exist in the organization, where they can go, and more importantly, what competencies they have to demonstrate in order to advance and get into those other positions.
So there is this perception that the salespeople are motivated by this carrot dangling in front of them, and what you've learned, in effect, is that that's not entirely true, that it is total rewards that's motivating the sales force these days.
The old idiom, cash is king, continues to hold true today. But we're assuming that an organization has a competitive and effective sales compensation plan. The question then is, how do we keep them engaged and motivated? The traditional sales organization has relied on the mindset that our high performers are going to get very well paid, lots of variable pay, they'll be happy, they'll be satisfied, and our marginal performers will self-select themselves out and find something else to do or move to another company. That's not the case, as we've seen in the recession. A lot of high performers, even though they still continue to be well paid, saying, what more is there for me in the organization? Where can I go? What are the challenges? And how can you help me get there? And that's what career development is about. In fact, there was one CEO of a company I just talked to last week, and he said, you know, what's really interesting is some of my best salespeople who make $400,000, $500,000 a year, they can't even string two sentences together in a report. They can't do some basic fundamental things that I would expect of a manager. Would I ever put this person in a manager role had they asked for it? No. Do they have leadership capabilities? No. Do they know what they need to do in order to move into these other positions? No.
So the organization that's just thinking about the incentive plan and not thinking about career development is
right.
Emphasized here. They're really being short-sighted in this environment, aren't they?
Absolutely they are. They're at risk of losing some of their talented people. And then the question becomes, oh, how much more can we pay them? How much more incentive? Do we need long-term bonuses and retention bonuses and so forth like that? No, the real emphasis we've discovered, it's about career development and creating engagement and motivating them once they're on board and once you have a competitive incentive plan. So the incentive plan is the ante at this point. It's now a question of what's the raise to keep people.
And Joe, I'm just curious, does this hold across industries, across company sizes? Does your research say that this career development, the importance of career development really holds across a lot of variables?
It does indeed. And in fact, when you think about the traditional organization, not just a sales organization, but large manufacturing organizations with 50, 100,000 employees, they have these in place already today for the broad base of the employee population. It's the sales organization that's the afterthought. I mean, the number of times that we've worked with companies where you do global grading and leveling and all that stuff, and then all of a sudden we get a call going, oh, we've got some salespeople out there. What do we do about them? How do we fit them into this? It's traditionally been an afterthought, and what we're seeing companies now do is they're looking at the sales population just as much as they're looking at manufacturing, HR, accounting, and any of the other functions that exist in a company.
Tell me a little bit more about the research that brought you to this conclusion, Joe.
Well, in our research of global companies, we asked them about a number of aspects of sales effectiveness. The number one issue that we found as a result of this research is that companies felt the most inhibiting factor was they did not have a career development plan. They didn't have a career map that laid out where salespeople can go. They didn't have the skills and competencies. And as sales leaders discovered that these exist in the organization, but for other functions, they realized that this is in fact a significant detractor from their ability to drive sales effectiveness. So that was ranked number one. Number two was a more traditional one, which is about lack of clarity about the job role. You get a muddy job role, it's not clear what people's primary responsibilities are. And the number three factor was ineffective sales incentive plans. So number two and number three are things that many of us in the consulting business have focused on for a while. Number one has emerged recently as the top priority, and that's why we're focusing on that today.
Let's talk a little bit more, Joe, about this idea of career map and
Okay.
how does the practitioner create that, and what is the person receiving this career map advice or guidance, what are they thinking during this process?
The benefits to having this in place are that you can evaluate your current sales force population against the map and against the competencies and these skills and determine if you've got the right people in the right place, because that's often a major inhibitor. I don't have the right people in the right place. How do I know that? Well, you don't know that unless you've got a yardstick against which you can measure people. The other benefit is that once you do have these people on board, you've actually got a map for them to move forward and to develop and to continue to advance in the organization. And what that means to you as a company is you're going to get the best out of your people. And not only that, you know you've got the best people in the right position. So you're maximizing your sales effectiveness in that way.
Joe, is there a process that you're suggesting that companies follow?
There is a process to follow, and obviously the process changes for every company because many companies have components of this in place already today. Sometimes it's a question of fine-tuning it. In many cases, it's a question of starting from scratch. And if you start from scratch, it really begins with creating job families. Creating job families is about clustering people or like roles in a similar bucket. So you can have people who are selling products and a highly transactional sales process. You may have other people in different roles who are more consultative in that they're bundling solutions, particularly when you think about companies that have acquired other companies and now post-merger there's a broader portfolio. Why did they do that? Because now we're bringing an entire solution to their customer base. So now you've got salespeople who are being asked, I don't need to be a transactional salesperson anymore. I need you to be now a consultative solution seller. How do we do that? What are the skills and competencies? How do you know which people have the ability to do that? And then there may be other salespeople who have been asked to sell at the C-suite across an entire enterprise. I've just described three very different types of sales roles, and then you can have roles that are responsible for going out and creating new business with new accounts and new logos, other roles that are more of the traditional farmer, the account manager, key account manager, or you can have a blend of the two. So I've just described to you two dimensions with three characteristics of each. I've just described to you the possibility of 9 different sales roles. So that's the very first thing. You have to have clarity about what roles you're trying to create competencies for. The second step then is about defining the competencies, and they can be both organizational competencies and they can be sales-specific competencies. The third step is then actually scaling these competencies. On a scale of 1 to 5, from entry through developing and intermediate and career and expert, so that there's a different level of competency required so that the salesperson knows what they have to do to get to the next level of competency. After that, it's then a question of putting it into a career map and making sure that you've got well-defined job abstracts, which say, if you want to be in this job, you've got to be at a competency level 3 or 4 on this particular, or scale 3 or 4 on this particular competency. Then the question is, how do we know who's got the right competencies? So you do an assessment of the organization, you can do 360s, you can do self-evaluation, you can do manager evaluation. As a result of that, you now identify gaps between the required competencies and the evaluation of the incumbent in the role. And coming out of that, you have individual training development programs. You may have institutional development programs, because as a company, we don't know how to do consultative selling. Once you've got that, you actually know what steps you need to take to close the gap. In short, that's how the process works.
Well, Joe, some very tangible takeaways here for the viewers. I want to thank Joe Clarkson of Towers Watson to come in and talk about how to bring total rewards into your sales organization. And for WorldatWork and WorkSpan TV, I'm Ryan Johnson.